Welcome to the apex of sports ownership, the Apex Athletic Collective.
Welcome in, everyone, to episode 83 of Instigate Success, Building an ABA Franchise, the official podcast of your Hoosier State Instigators. I am Jakeymuffins here with a special co-host for tonight's episode, Frosty, where we'll be debriefing this whole second season in the ABA. How are you doing tonight, Frosty?
Man, I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
I am doing well. I'm looking forward to breaking down this season. You know, we ran our full second season, so that's a big thing for us, I think. And obviously some steps forward, some things we got to improve, but I think overall, I think we're all proud of our second season here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's if you'd have asked me, I think yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of Apex becoming a company. If you'd have told me 2 years ago that we'd already be 2 seasons deep into this, I would have called you crazy. But here we are, and I, like you said, there's ups and downs every season on and off the court. But I'm super, thankful and excited that we've gotten as far as we have in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, both of us came from the fan-controlled sports realm, just as fans, and now we're sitting behind the ownership chairs, and we're opening that up to fans. So, it's cool to have that. And then obviously we're going to be having those fan votes coming out soon. So keep an eye out for everybody that is on the Patreon. If you're a fan voter tier or higher, those will be coming out soon. But I think let's start with, I guess the big thing to cover is how this season went. So let's break that down first. Yeah. So we started the season with a winning streak. That's our first time ever where we had a winning record. So that was pretty cool to see. We got ourselves in those power rankings after the first 2 weeks. I think we were up to number 16 in the power rankings. So just on the start of the season, how are you feeling on that?
No, great. We played Louisville Pros in one of those games, a team that we'd split the season with last year. At no point were we above 500 in our first season. So to come out firing the first 2 games of the season was really awesome. To be nationally ranked in the ABA, 160 teams in the league this last season. And to be ranked 16th for even a little bit was really awesome to see, and really made it feel like the hard work folks put in between season 1 and season 2 was really paying off. So it was awesome.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a huge accomplishment. I had it up on my board at work for the entirety of the season that we are ranked number 16. So everybody that came into my office got to see that. But I think I might have jumped ship a little bit early, but we moved from Clinton, Indiana to Fishers, Indiana, and we opened up our season at the new venue, Best Choice Fieldhouse. Would you be able to go a little bit into detail as far as the behind the scenes with that?
Yeah, it was. So it was really interesting. We had, first of all, we loved Clinton. We loved being there. We loved the small but passionate fan base that we've been able to build in the season there. But we ran into, I would say, a lot of just technological issues first and foremost that we felt like we couldn't overcome. As folks know who watched the live stream last year, in season 1, I should say, we struggled at times in a building built in 1905, and unfortunately, I think the guy Cody who's running that community center is doing a great job. He'd just taken over when we got in there. He's trying to raise money for them to deal with some of the facilities conditions. In fact, I think our lease there helped them pay for a new roof, which was awesome. But we just, as we looked at it financially, and maybe we ran into a little bit of bad luck. Indiana State was a nationally ranked team with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that year, the first year they'd been relevant in a long time, which tore away. But what we kind of came to find out as an ownership group, I think, was because of that, and just because of the lack of a viable player pool in Terre Haute, it felt like we needed to move the team. And so we looked at some places, but we knew pretty quickly we wanted to be in Hamilton County, Indiana. We wanted to keep the team in Indiana. Hamilton County is the fastest growing county in Indiana. In fact, the G League team relocated to there. We just got in Fishers, where we play. They just put up the Fishers Event Center, where there's a hockey team, a indoor football league team that debuts this weekend, and then also a pro volleyball team, right? And so we knew pretty quickly we wanted to be there. We met with Best Choice, and man, it felt like a really good fit for us. And I was really happy with the facilities all year. I thought it was a big upgrade for us. It gave us an opportunity to show a little bit different of an experience, right? With the front court seats everywhere. And so we felt really good about it. It's a pretty well-known facility in Fishers. And so we spent some time working with them, and it worked out really well. And now Best Choice Fieldhouse is our home for this season.
Yeah, no, as just like you said, I loved Fishers. We wouldn't be where we are without that first season having everything play out the way it did. And I loved the historic venue there, but it was cool seeing everybody being able to be courtside this season at Best Choice. The other cool thing is for people like me that travel in, the reception is a lot better out in Fishers. So like when I was using my GPS and stuff, it didn't cut out, and it's a little bit easier to navigate. But I think overall, I think as far as this season went, that Best Choice was a great move for us. And I hope that we can continue to grow there. I think it's a great venue for the team. And I did like that we were able to interact with kind of like the youth leagues as well throughout the day, where they've got games going on the other courts, and try to interact with the community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot going on there, as you can imagine. They have, just the, like you said, the youth leagues that are going on during the day there. They also have a men's league that started up towards the end of our season, which was really cool to see, and some volleyball leagues as well. And so I know one night, it was pretty crowded there. We don't rent the whole facility. We rent the court that we're playing on. Generally, that's fine because most stuff ends by the time our games start. But we had to move a game, I think, one night, and so the men's league was happening at the same time. But we were getting a lot of interest and a lot of folks watching. And I know, talking to the folks at Best Choice, should we go there again next year, which I think is going to be the plan, they want to kind of up like their marketing of us and their ownership of the team. As far as we're their home. And so I'm looking forward to that relationship growing. Because we spent a whole day where players took pictures with kids and just watched them. We had a couple games where our players were on the bench cheering for the teams and stuff, which is kind of a really cool experience for folks. So it went really well. It is really when you look at Fishers, the basketball community really plays a lot in Best Choice Fieldhouse. So it's kind of the center of that ecosystem for us.
Absolutely. So let's go back to this season. I'll pull up the graphic. We'll take a look at how this season went, and then we'll break it down more so into players. Obviously, there's some fluidity within players this year. We had our coach for the full season this year, a little bit of a different situation. But let's break down the results from this year, and then kind of see how things went and break down the ups and downs of this season. So let's see. I think if I switch it, that works a lot better. As we mentioned, the first two games, that was a hot start for us. The best record we've ever had, 2-0. Then we went on a little bit of a losing streak, got ourselves right around that 500 mark for the majority of the season. And then at the end of the season, you see we kind of fell off there. Were there any games in particular? I mean, obviously we had a couple of ranked wins, but do you think there was kind of a turn point for you in this season?
It's interesting. The Lions game was a turning point for us. I felt in a kind of a good and a bad way, I guess. And the fact that we won the game, we finally got over the hump against the Indiana Lions, one of the best teams in the league every year. It was a closely contested game, and our guys really showed some grit. In Danville, it was a game that we weren't scheduled to play, right? It replaced another game that was forfeit against, I think, the Lake Erie or the West Michigan or whatever, one of those teams that
Midwest Monsters.
Yeah. So it wasn't a game we were scheduled. Both teams took it on a kind of short notice. And what was cool about it, I think we talked about it a little bit on the broadcast, but both teams reached out to Joe Newman, the commissioner and owner of the ABA, and invited him to the game because he lives here in Indiana, and he came to the game with his daughter, Susie. And it was really cool to have the owner of the ABA there watching two teams go and battle it out and for us to get the win. It was the first time he'd seen us play in person. And so we had a really nice talk afterwards about like how great the team was and how we looked. And then that was kind of the last game that we had our full squad together. And unfortunately went on quite the downward spiral after that game, a game that we barely won, as you see, by 2 points, but we won it nonetheless. So it was kind of good and bad. It gave us some recognition in the league to show we're a legit organization. And unfortunately, it was our last one of the season.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely one of the key games I would have circled on the calendar from this past season. I think the other game would be the game against the Aces. That's our first time we had a win against a top 10 ranked team. So it showed what we know we've been capable of, that we are on that level with all these other ranked teams. Obviously, we hit the power rankings this season, but to compete and win against a top 10 ranked team, it shows that we are capable of doing that. Obviously we had some inconsistencies throughout the year, but when we are firing on all cylinders, we are one of the very best teams. Hopefully that's something we can continue the next season and kind of keep ourselves in those power rankings. But that was our first time. Actually, we had a lot of close games last year, with the Lions and some of the other teams that were towards those power rankings, but that was our first time able to finally get over that hump. But then we did go on a little bit of a downward after that, other than that Lions game.
The other one that really stood out to me too was the second game against the Legends, where we finally, in the first time in franchise history, good and bad again, right? Which is I think the story of the Instigators in 2024-25 is that we held a team under 100 points for the first time and failed to score over 100 points for the first time as a team, right? There was one other game where we technically failed to score over 100 points in regulation, but it went to overtime, and we lost by 2 against the Legends last year. But I'm sorry, the Pros last year. But it was a really interesting game where I thought it was the best our defense looked all year by a wide margin. It was fun to watch because it's something I talked about a lot with the players going into it. It's like, man, I don't want to give up 100 points every game. And so that was the first game and so far only game. Unfortunately, we've been able to hold the team under 100 points, although we came real close a bunch of times. And so, there's that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely both sides of the coin with that one. We ran into, you mentioned the overtimes. We ran into a few, I guess you could say, technical difficulties as well throughout the season. We've got to make sure we know the overtime rules in case we aren't physically there, so that everyone's on the same page. And it seems that we're not the only team in the ABA that doesn't quite know those rules, but just so it's clear for everyone, the overtime rules are 3:10 and out. It's a 3-minute period, and then it's the elam ending to 10. So that's one of the things I think, obviously that in officiating that we want to kind of clear up for next season as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I take a lot of pride. I did as an owner and as a coach of knowing the ABA rules, reading through them. And you can often see me on the broadcasts talking to the refs, talking to the coaches about the rules. One of the things that I think that we need to do better as we talk about that, right? One is to talk to the refs before the games about the rules of the game. And then also making sure that our entire coaching staff knows the rules. Because at the end of the day, they got to enforce those. They got to be watching for them. I'm there to help when I can. But as we saw this year, I can't always be there. I missed my first Instigators games all year, the entire time we've been around this year. I think I missed 2 games. And both of them, we had pretty crazy rule violations. that didn't get followed. So, I don't know. We're working on, I hope we can announce soon, we're working on some things to do some referee development to help referees in the ABA, both current referees and future referees in the ABA. We're going to talk about that soon because we want to make sure everyone follows the rules. It's one of the frustrating things. I love the ABA, but the rule changes, the rule books aren't communicated very well. The referees actually don't get a copy of a rule book sent to them from the league. They actually have to find one and print it off themselves. And so what happens often is referees have rule books that are a year or two old and the rules change. A good example is the foul rules changed last year. It was the first time in our first season that players could foul out. And that was at 8 fouls. And so a lot of referees didn't know that because they had a rule book from the year before. So the league, it's something the league's got to get better at. It's something we're going to talk to the league about, is making sure the referees fall. And I don't, like, to be clear, I'm not like being a homer about this. I'm not saying, hey, at away games, the referees were against us. I think that happens sometimes, rarely. But more importantly, the referees at our games, at away games, at other teams' games, what we're hearing from other owners, the rules change from city to city. And so, we had a pretty big issue, not to dwell too much on this, but in the Columbus game that we lost by 1 point, we get there and I'm sitting on the bench with the coaches, and it's the third quarter, we're down 20, and a 3D is called, and I see a guy going like this over there on the bench because they don't have a 3D light. Well, the rule was that the referees are supposed to check for a 3D light before the game, and if the team doesn't have it, our understanding and the Wizards' understanding of a rule that was changed last year is that that's 2 free throws for the away team, right? So we contested that with the referee and during the game, and he said, I'm not dealing with that right now. And then we contested it with the league. Come to find out that the rule had changed, and we didn't know that, and the Wizards didn't know that either. And so it's stuff like that like, look, this is a semi-pro league, right? But if we want to be a pro league, if we want to be a pro organization, like, we got to hold ourselves to a really high standard, especially when it comes to the rules of the game. Some of the best things about the ABA are the changes in the rules. Some of the most frustrating things about the game, about the ABA, are the changes in the rules. And so we got to get that ironed out for sure, just so that, like, the fans get something consistent. You and I were watching the Lions game, the first one before it got replayed in the playoffs against the Aces, and that game had a 5-minute overtime.
Yeah.
In a playoff game, which is completely unacceptable. So hopefully, for me, that was a huge source of frustration this whole year, was following the rules. And, we'll talk about it later, I'm sure, but the overtime or the playoff rules change, everything changes, and it kind of throws everything out of whack. And it's hard for fans to follow when the rules aren't followed correctly.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I mean, that not just in our team, but not to jump too far off topic, but it happened with the Lions and the Aces, other games that we've seen throughout. So it is one of the league-wide things. I think all of us as owners and other teams, we want that to be level throughout the league. Everyone's on the same page, because it does give us that next step in professionalism when it comes to the games. I think with the inconsistency, it is one of the things that makes it look a little bit more amateur, because you're not going to see those type of mistakes in the NBA or any other league like that.
That's right. And you look at it, it's it's not a big deal in the fact that we're a small league, but it is a big deal in the fact that we want to be a bigger league. But you look at that Lions and Aces game, right? It's a playoff game. The Minotaur streaming, those guys are amazing that do the streaming for the Lions, announced it was their most watched game ever. And the ending of that game doesn't count.
Yeah.
It was pretty rough.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that before, too, where they wound up replaying a game. I'm pretty sure that is a first.
Yeah, at least, not for the ABA, that's a first. I know in other leagues, maybe you replay the entire game, but they replay the last 10 seconds of the game and then eventually in overtime, which makes it even weirder. But
yeah, jumping back to the Instigators, our starting roster was a lot different this season. Last season we kind of had a solid 3, 4, 5 guys that were on the the starting lineup for the majority of the season. This year we had a different rotation. It seemed just about every week. Would you say that was a positive, or I guess a mixed bag of sorts for this season?
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag, right? I think some of the players that we picked up. Well, let me take a step back. A lot of the guys that we had in that summer league that we played in the IBL, I really enjoyed those players. A lot of them were like originals. I think we kept 5 originals. By the end of the season, we had 1 original on the team. But there was also some things that told us the team needed to get better, I think, right? So for one, we lost 2 games in a rec league, right? As a professional team. And 2, we knew there were some culture and commitment issues, right? We weren't able to run a successful practice at all the first season after November, which, I think we had 1 practice December through March, which I think we as owners, I think fans, I think players all pointed to as one of the reasons that we didn't go further and didn't make the playoffs, right? And so we knew we had to make some changes. Another thing is we knew coming to Fishers near the Indianapolis area that our tryouts were going to be bigger, right? You talk about the tryouts in Clinton. I think we had 9 people at each of the tryouts. I think it was 7 to 9, so 16 people total in the 2 tryouts we held, right? When you're doing tryouts in Indianapolis, sometimes you're getting 30 or 40 people. So we knew the talent pool was going to get better and we were going to be able to fill some gaps. So that team wasn't going to be the final team, but we were going to add to it. And I thought we had a really good strategy of let's get some guys on the practice squad. Let's build around them. I think Coach Dobbs and Julio were really in charge of turning that culture around and holding people to a higher standard. And I think we learned a lot of lessons in that. Good and bad. And so I think, a lot of the players we added, particularly mid-season, I thought were really big additions to us. I also think that, some of the losses were bad for us and some of the losses were good for us as far as players leaving, right? Dylan Ware's a player that I wish would have been able to stick around. It's one of those things that I think we got lucky in the first season a little bit and that we didn't have a whole lot of transients. I think we signed 2 guys after the season started. That was Aubrey Patterson and that was Mike Pugh. And the rest rode with us almost the entire season. We did have 3 guys drop off at the beginning of the season that weren't going to play a whole lot. And I think, Derek Ritchie, Ethan Bishop, and one other I can't remember the name of. Oh, and then V dropped off as well. But, I think what it ended up happening, though, is that we just didn't. We ended up with the same practice issue that we ended with last year, right? We had 4, 5, 6 guys regularly showing up to practice and a bunch of guys not, which makes it hard to build chemistry. And then towards the end of the season, we had less guys showing up to games at all because of personal issues, right? These guys work full-time jobs. They have families, right? This doesn't pay the bills for them at this level. And so as those things pop up, they have to start making decisions about what's more important to them. And sometimes basketball is not the thing that's the most important thing, and nor should it be, right? With some of the other things going on. But what it did is it hurt us on the court, right? We didn't have the chemistry, particularly on defense. I believe that is our biggest problem with defense is we have no chemistry. On offense, you look at the scores, right? 128, 139, right? Even in these games we're losing, 120, 110, 140, 140, right? We're scoring. Our guys are talented scoring, but we don't have the chemistry to play defense, and that shows. And it showed up with turnovers as well. So I think it was a little bit of a mixed bag. A lot of the guys that we brought on we're going to keep. Some of them were not. Again, some of those guys, like the AB situation, right? We didn't talk about it a whole lot. I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot here, but, AB gets into a physical fight with a referee, gets suspended 2 games by the ABA. The ABA tried to suspend him for life. We fought against that. And then, he signs with the Lebanon Leprechauns and quits the team while he's suspended. So stuff like that, hurts. You know what I mean? We had a couple players that, I'm not going to name any names, but we had a couple players that quit early in the season from last year's team that were the ones talking about accountability, but then would show up 20 minutes late to practice and leave 20 minutes early and thought they were entitled to be on the court. And so as much as I love those guys, you don't want them on the team, but also we want to keep a consistent team. So I think one of the things we're going to talk about as a board is some sort of policy, some sort of strategy on player acquisition, so that we can talk through that. I think the roster was too transient this year. I think we added too many guys. And it's hard. We'll talk about the fan voting side, I'm sure, later, right? Some of the things we tried. But when guys, when this is again semi-pro, right, where guys aren't making hardly anything to play, then you gotta, they deserve to be given, some grace when they can't show up to things, when they can't do things. And, and that means that sometimes people will leave, but also like we want people to feel supported and want to stay as instigators. And sometimes that didn't happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. It's also a great time, I guess we could shout out that we are always willing and accepting sponsorships, and those sponsorships are not only limited to the team, you can also do a player sponsorship. So that can help us in situations like this. Obviously, like you said, players, this is not their primary source of income. Like they all have, as well as us, there's stuff going on in their lives, and it does come down to real life decisions all the time for these guys. So those players sponsorships really help in some of these situations. But yeah, I would agree with you that I think the influx of the roster this year, it hurt us a little bit. And I think especially at the end of the season, we saw last year, I think we kind of rallied together because the guys knew each other, even though they weren't practicing. And obviously that's still something we've got to get figured out, hopefully for next season. So that way the overall team chemistry is better. We did do the summer league to try to implement some ways to improve that this season. But by the end of the season, with the change in the roster, it just ultimately fell through. But I think that even though our defense was down, the offense was up, and I think that shows the talent pool increase from that move as well.
For sure.
So some positives with it, but definitely some things we still need to improve upon. I also want to shout out Malcolm Martin for making second team All ABA. I think he was our only player this season that got an All ABA honors. So definitely shout out to him. I think we had some other guys that could have made that, but I don't know necessarily how the voting for that works.
Yeah, me neither. A funny story. I didn't actually know Malcolm got it until we saw the post.
Yeah.
So it wasn't any decision. I think a lot of our guys were deserving. The reality is that like even especially in our region, man, the guard depth is ridiculous. It's hard to make an all-star team as a shooting guard when Cam Mitchell's scoring 50 points a game. And his brother, Kevin, who we saw the other night on the stream, right, is right there behind him at 30 points a game or whatever, right? Like, so, but that shows just like how good Malcolm was all year to make second team All ABA, right? It wasn't division. It was the entire nation. And so shout out to him, one of our team captains, one of those guys that showed up every day and gave it his all, man. I'm super appreciative of Malcolm. And he and his wife have done a lot of stuff behind the scenes as well to help make Apex as successful as possible as well. So forever grateful to them. And he totally, deserves those honors.
Absolutely. And you pointed out to me at the last game, and it's the first time that I noticed, he practices with a trash bag over the ball before every game. So just a little fun fact for the fans.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, so I mean that was our only guy. So hopefully we'll next season we'll try to figure out how we get that vote in so we can get some more guys on that All ABA roster. But I don't think, as far as I know, we don't have anybody in the All-Stars this week or this championship weekend, correct?
We don't have anyone in the All-Star game. I think it has a lot to do with the roster just kind of trading back and forth. It's so funny. You look at last year's team, 7-9. and someone with ABA honors, right? This year, 7 and 10, one person with ABA honors. So as much change as there was, a lot of things stayed the same for the Instigators, which is really interesting, especially if, like, again, you know, some guys that felt like they were owed time on the court. Like, without those guys, we still had the same result. And I think next year we're going to be even better.
Yeah, it is. It is, I guess, ironic that we literally have the same record, same outcome as last season. Obviously, different start, different ends, but actually the ending is the same. We both years we got to that final play-in game,
Yeah.
but we just haven't been able to get over that hump and to get into the playoffs. I think obviously that's going to be our main goal next season, is to get into the playoffs. But I think part of it too is our division. You know, both years we've been in the ABA, we've been in the division with the defending champions. So the Lions were the co-champions their first season, the Fury the champions this season. If we wind up staying in the same division, the Fury, I think, are the favorites right now to repeat.
Absolutely.
So part of it's that, but I think another thing is, I know there's some behind the scenes thing as far as why it didn't happen, but it would be nice to play all of the teams in our division, so that way it's more of a true ranking in the division. I'm sure you probably feel the same way in regards to that.
Yeah, the division stuff. I know so I won't be able to go to the owners meeting this year because it's in St. Louis, and I'll be in Europe on a family vacation, actually. But I know there's going to be some talks about realignment. I get the realignment last year to an extent. So what happened was we were actually going to be moved to the blue division, which would have been with a lot of the teams in St. Louis. When we were in Terre Haute, that made a ton of sense. In fact, we talked about that a lot, right? That made a lot of sense. But once we moved to Indianapolis, we felt we belonged in the red division, right? With the Legends, the Lions, the Pros, right? Cincinnati, all those teams that we played last year, because we were so close to all of them. But in order to try to balance out the teams in the 4 divisions within our region, they had to do some moving around. We got shuffled up to Chicago as the odd man out. So as a result of that, and then the Rebels kind of got the same treatment we did. They got shuffled from the black division over to the blue division. So they're playing all the teams in St. Louis, which means you're never playing any of the teams in your division. And like, all the divisions had 8 or 9 teams, which was fine. But then, as you and I know, a lot of teams didn't finish the season. So all the divisions had between 4 and 6 teams in them by the end of the season. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes of the realignment. I hope we get the opportunity to actually play teams in our division. You know, you look at it, we didn't play the Frost, we didn't play the Inferno, we didn't play the Saints, right? Those are 3 teams in our division that we never got a chance to play. And then the Rebels got moved into our division for the playoffs, and we hadn't played them at all. You know, the last time we played the Rebels was game 2, season 1, right? That's our first ever regular season victory, 151 to 114. But we didn't play a lot of the teams. And so I hope that gets fixed. And I hope that we get to a division with the teams around us. You know, I have a lot of respect for the Lions. I have a lot of respect for the Legends. And now the Shuckers will be entering the ABA as a full-time participant next year, right? I feel like there's some really good opportunity for some really good hometown rivalries against some of these other teams in Indiana, which would be good for us. It would be good for those teams, and it'd be good for the ABA. So that's one thing, you know, besides the referees, that's the number one thing I hope they change, is that they figure that out, because I think there's a lot of community building that could be done by us playing, you know, 6-8 games against those teams right here in Indiana, you know, where basketball is king.
Absolutely. I think that would be amazing. We could even make like a some kind of friendly rivalries there. You know, this season, every team we played, all the Indiana-based teams, we were able to defeat. So I think if it goes into that next season, we would have bragging rights in regards to any of those matchups.
Yeah, we beat the Shuckers, we beat the Legends, and we beat the Lions. And technically, we beat the Midwest Monstars, who were in Hammond, even though it was a forfeit.
Yeah.
But those teams are tough. So, you know, we could lose to any one of them. But also, like, you're right, we have the bragging rights going into it. the only team in Indiana to beat all the other Indiana teams.
Yeah, so I mean, it should be the Hoosier State going into next season. Um, but yeah, no, that's something I think, it would be cool, regardless of which division we're in, just to at least play the teams in the division. That way, and it's a little bit easier to see how we rank against these teams. I mean, on paper, obviously, I think if we looked at this season when we had that play-in matchup against the Frost, on paper, we would have been the favorites. Ultimately, it didn't fall our way. But we know that even the teams ranked above us with better records, the Saints, we beat them twice last season. Like,
Yeah.
that's a team we know we can beat, but we didn't have the chance to play against them this season.
That's
So I think playing all those teams is something that I hope is able to be accomplished.
Me too, man. The Inferno owner up there, Frank, is a really great guy. They're a really great organization as well. I'd love to play them more and get an opportunity. They're a first-class organization that's run really well, so that'd be a fun one to step on the court with. I don't know who'd win, but I'd like to find out.
Yeah, no, I definitely would too. And hopefully I can make it out to some more away games this year. I think I only made it out to a few home games this season, but obviously my schedule is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But it's fun. I always love being out there and being able to be there in person. This year, another big change for us was the camera. So I didn't have to run the stream or whatever this season, with Rob running the camera. We had the AI camera, which it worked well. But I will say we had our fair share of technical difficulties throughout the season. Just with the camera stopping or somebody bumping the camera and knocking the score off the screen, something along the lines of that. But overall, I would say it was an improvement as far as the games go, and gave us some more opportunities to be more involved as owners, I think, on the court with the games.
Yeah, absolutely. Net positive on the camera. Shout out Pixelot. Like you said, there were some technical difficulties, although I'd say outside of like one, I would say none of the camera stoppages were the camera's fault. I think it was either internet. One of the things we got to work out with Best Choice is we had to run the streams off of a hotspot this year, which, as you know, is not the most stable internet connection. So, I think there was that. There was also, just times where so when you do live streams on Pixelot, it's limited to 3 hours. And so if the game gets started, and you're supposed to start at 15 minutes early, because what happens is it takes the big picture and then it uses the AI, right, to follow the ball. So it needs some time to do that. So you give it 15 minutes. But then if the game starts 20 minutes late for whatever reason, then you're really pushing against it unless the game goes really fast. So we learned some of those things and those will get better. But again, we want to dive deeper into we started to do it with the highlights and some things, and we're going to continue to do that from last season for throughout the off season. But it's got a lot of really cool capabilities. We hope to dig into that. I thought one of our fans in our Discord, right, made a really good point. He said, it was harder to figure out when the live streams were this year than it was last year. And so we got to clean that up a little bit. One of the things Pixelot's working on that we're really excited. So what's interesting is live streaming didn't actually kick off on the Pixelot that we have until like a month before the season started. So we weren't even sure if we were going to be able to live stream with this camera. So it's really early in its like infancy. But one of the things they talked about is that they're working on third-party plugins for things like StreamYard and OBS, which would allow us to do some of the graphics and things that we do, be able to stream to multiple places, some of the things that we'd like to do more often, so you get those notifications again like you used to, and so that we can pull it off of. The first year what we did is, right, we did basically a private YouTube link into our Patreon. This year you had to go to a third-party site, Pixelot site. And so if we could get back to what we were doing in season 1 with that, I think it would help a lot of folks. Because we could even post it ahead of time like we did before. So, but overall, man, that technology is wild. It was great. I loved it. It saved us, like you said, a ton of man hours. We didn't have any highlights in season 1 because like you and I don't have the time to go through and rewatch the footage and cut highlights. So the fact that it does that, it's not perfect, but nothing ever will be. And it gets us a lot more content that we're able to put out and keep our YouTube pretty chock full of stuff as we go. So I think we kind of got to a rhythm mid-season and then kind of struggled with it as the two of us got really busy. But man, that camera was awesome. I felt like it helped a lot. And the video quality was very good.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think one of our fan votes, a little teaser for the off season, we're gonna have an opportunity to name the camera.
That's right.
So I know we were talking about names for the camera. I think I'm gonna stick with my submission for Rob 2.0.
I like it. No, I like that one a lot. I haven't come up with one. You know, we have a ton of like smart robots in our house. I have like 2 robotic vacuums. You know, I have a robotic lawnmower and snowblower. I have all these like robots, and we name them all. And so usually I'm pretty good at this, but I'm running out of robot names.
Yeah.
So I gotta think through it. But yeah, that's gonna be something we do fun in the summer. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and you talking about AI, you know, we had the AI podcast as well. So we did it a few times. It was an experimental thing. I think it turned out very well. I know when you pitched that to me, I was surprised. It does not sound, you know, if you weren't told that it was an AI podcast, I don't think I would have known that it was an AI podcast. It legitimately sounds like it's actual people commenting about the game that, you know, we just streamed.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. They just added, we haven't tried it yet. We should. They just added a new feature, Jake, where you can jump on with the AI hosts and ask questions and they'll answer them on the podcast.
Oh, that's very, very interesting.
So it might be something, I don't know. I think it's a fan vote. It might be one of the things we roll out as kind of a secondary podcast next year. But it got good feedback. And it's one of those behind the scenes things that our fan voters got to see. That other folks did not, but I was really happy with it. With what did we name them? Jamie and I can't remember, but they both had AI in the name.
They did, yeah. Let me see if I can pull it.
But no, they sounded it was super conversational. They did a good job. Mostly broke it down. Most of their information was correct because it uses the audio of basically you and I broadcasting the game. And so it takes what we're saying and turns that into the podcast, which is kind of is really cool.
It is Claire and Jamie.
Claire and Jamie, that was the names. Yeah. Anyway, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we'll continue to improve upon that, have that a little bit more frequently for our you know, exclusive Patreon access next season and maybe throughout this off season here. You know, I think another big thing this season, we hit upon it a little bit, but you weren't the coach this season to end the season. We had Coach Dobbs and Julio. And, you know, I think the culture that they built, I really think that was kind of one of the things that we improved a lot this season was the expectations and things along that line. You know, obviously the fluidity in the roster kind of hindered some of those things, but I did like the overall changes, and I think that it was a pretty successful debut season for Coach Dobbs. I wanted to hear your opinion. I know she finished with 7 wins. You ran a team that also had a total of 7 wins. How it compares to when you were coach?
Yeah, well, one, I went 7-4. No, but you know, I think you're absolutely right. Coach Dobbs and Julio brought a lot of really great positives to the team. I felt like one, you know, Coach Dobbs has a lot of experience in coaching basketball, and I think that showed through a lot. I think that she, you know, was no nonsense and held people to a standard a lot, you know, and I think that it's also really hard to coach a bunch of grown men is one of the things that I've learned. And so what I love about this like company is that, you know, we we go 7-10, there were times I thought Coach Dobbs did a really great job. And there were times where I'm like, oh man, like we talked about on the last podcast, just like everybody, mistakes get made. Right. And so, one of the things that we're going to be doing next week is going to come out, as you mentioned, is we're going to do the survey where actually we get to hear fan voters' opinions, players' opinions, and coaches' opinions on everybody, and use that to make decisions going forward. I will tell you though, one of the things I love most about Coach Dobbs is how dedicated she is to the Instigators, always working off behind the scenes. Like Wednesday night, her and Julio Bowles, he's in a bowling league on Wednesday nights, and they were talking to somebody about potential sponsorship and pulled them up on the phone with me. They're always working to try to build a community for us, to try to build a team for us and build connections with us. So the stuff that Coach Dobbs does off the court is super important. And one of the things that like we didn't know we were missing until we had it, because it's hard work to build a semi-pro team into profitability, I imagine, because we haven't done it yet. And so it takes everybody behind a mission to do that. And like one of the things they did, even more so than the stuff on the court, right? Like, yeah, we got some wins. That's great. But even more importantly, like she worked her tail off to get this team noticed outside of what we were doing. And so I'm super appreciative of that. We'll be making decisions on coaches and players as we go into the off season, and we'll see where all that lands based on that feedback we get from everybody. But man, it was a completely different experience from the first coach that we had. Much more hands-on that kind of stuff, much more passionate about the players. I know she was someone that would call the players all the time and chat with them about their personal lives, because that's just as important as their professional lives. So loved that about her. And it's one of those things that I'm forever grateful for having Coach Dobbs.
Yeah, definitely. And we use those fan inputs. That's a huge key when we go into the off-season mode. We did it last season with the players, what we were looking for in a coach, and we use that feedback for what the fans wanted in a coach, and we interviewed, and that's how we came to meet Coach Dobbs and eventually sign her on to be the coach. And obviously the players, we tried to bring back the players that you guys wanted us to bring back. Ultimately, I think JoJo was the only player that wound up finishing the season that was on the roster from season one.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, there was a lot of consternation between the returning players and the new players. And like bench players and starters. It was really interesting. One of the things we talked a lot about the fan voting stuff. One of the things that unfortunately I feel like didn't go as well as we had hoped was the 12th man vote, adding the last person on the bench. We actually stopped doing those midway through the season, not because it wasn't a good idea, not because the fans were picking bad players. In fact, we talked about it a lot the first 6 games. The players they were picking were good. The problem is that players I felt like players were trying to fight for positions and trying to get themselves more playing time. So being put on that vote felt like a punishment rather than a reward for folks, or folks that won the vote often felt like they should be playing more minutes, even though like that wasn't what it was about. You know what I mean? And so, a lot of locker room drama early in the season between all those groups. And, a lot of folks chose to leave because of that. And I think that's fine. That's for me, the number one thing we got to stop next year is the drama. This season, the second game of the season that we won, the first game of the season we won, the players are arguing with each other on the bench instead of like going out and meeting with fans. And it's just not a great look for an organization that wants to build a family-friendly environment. And so I felt like the drama lasted most of the season. And so, sometimes you gotta, it's not we talk about this. It's not a rec league, right? It's not a thing where like we're coming together for ourselves to play, right? We're trying to provide entertainment to the community. And like guys are trying to make it to the next level, or they're trying to play the last few seasons of their career. And what we need like a brotherhood, right? We need a family, people that, like Dom would say in Fast and the Furious, right? Like, and so like I want to get us to that, because the drama for me this year, frankly, was too much. I think you heard from me often about like just trying to, as the owner on the ground here, trying to deal with the drama. And so some players left because of the drama. Some players left because they were part of the drama, frankly. And so that's going to be something important to me as we talk to players next year. We're going to be doing tryouts again this year, obviously. One thing that we've talked about doing is adding an interview process with the players. That like, hey, are you okay if you're the 12th man on the bench that's maybe playing 3 or 4 minutes? Because if not, like, this may not be the place, right? We don't know that you're going to be a starter. And that's hard to do. A lot of these guys were starters everywhere they went, right? And so to come here and then like, yeah, maybe you're playing 5 to 8 minutes a game until you acclimate to this league, was hard for people to accept. Hey, you got voted as a fan voter, rather than seeing that as a badge of honor, seeing it as a punishment. That stuff sucked. And so we got to figure out, I want to figure out new ways, and we'll be asking for ideas on that. But we want to find new ways to get the fans involved. I think eventually we'll come back to the fans man vote when we get the right culture built and the right players built. I think we just implemented it a little too early with the roster we had, and folks didn't have a clear understanding of what was going on.
Yeah, I agree, and it looks like Night J Wright agrees. We got to figure out how to get rid of that drama there. The no drama llama gators.
I'm with you, KJ. Let's do it.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I agree. I think, especially the guys that bought into the team, we were able to kind of see who that was once we did launch that 12th man, the fans man vote. It was kind of obvious really quick, especially on our side being the owners.
The first vote.
Yeah, there was a few players immediately that was just not an option. So
yeah,
didn't wind up working out for that. But I think that's something obviously we want to continue to do, though. We want to have the fans' input. I know we even threw out the idea of trying to have the fans do like a starting lineup. That's still something I think down the road we'd like to get to.
Yeah.
And then one thing that we weren't able to do this season that we did last season that hopefully we can implement, whether or not it is the same exact way or if we wind up doing it somehow ourselves. Last we had that weekly votes through the fan controlled app. I think that's something we'll have to see how we can implement that, because I don't know how realistic it is to jump back in with them. That app's a lot different now, and it's not really functional. So
yeah.
But I think if we can implement that, that's also, and we did the fantasy thing actually for a little bit this season. I think that's another thing that we'll have to continue to build upon going into next season, is to have kind of like that fantasy atmosphere for our team as well.
Yeah, we had a lot of really good ideas. I think one of the things that we got to focus on next year to like carry those out successfully, right? This is the hard part of like running a business, like what we want to talk about, is like we need to build our pool of volunteers and community managers and folks, right? Like right now, so outside of the fantasy thing that like Jay was doing, but then he had issues that he had to deal with. You and I did all of that. And like what I think, and I think you probably feel the same way, as it was not sustainable for the two of us to do all of those things the entire season. And so we had to start dropping things because we just couldn't, there weren't enough hours in the day. And so, we have some ideas on how to get like, maybe high school interns, college interns that can help with some of that stuff, and volunteers to help with like the stuff going on at the game, because even still, like, ideally, I don't want to be running the scoreboard. We want other folks doing that so I can help with other like operational things. And same for you. And so we have like, I think we laid out a really good roadmap, particularly like the first fourth of the season, of what a really exciting, engaging basketball franchise can look like on a small scale. We just need help implementing all of that stuff, because like it got bigger than a 2-man team really quick. No one's more appreciated for the Instigators than you. I just want to say that. You are our super fan. We love you. You're so dedicated. Like, back at you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Night J, he's always here. for the podcast and all of our broadcasts. We really appreciate all the support. I will shout out, I think our Patreon jumped up when I just checked earlier. I think we're up to 150 total subscribers.
Yeah.
So that is another improvement from last season as we continue to grow. Our community outreach is growing as far as that, especially on the digital side.
What I loved about Patreon is other teams noticed.
Yeah.
I think I saw 4 other teams launch Patreons with different models similar to ours. I think one of the things that we have to do is we're going to be, just so you all know, if you're fan voters, we're going to be sending out some rewards to stuff. One of them is going to be a personally written letter from me and some other things. So be on the lookout because we appreciate you guys so much. I think that model is the future. I think we need to continue to engage people on it. Other than just games, you know, we tried a couple things again with some articles and stuff, but it really took off this year. I think we were at what 80 something when the season started, and now we just eclipsed 150 today. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I think our other goal we want to hit eventually is 500 on the YouTube side. I know we're still climbing on that one, but
that's the next big one. Yeah, we're at what are we at? Almost 250.
Around there, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, we'll talk about. We launched the Twitch channel this year, which I think has been beneficial. In fact, that's where Night J, right? This is actually an old Twitch channel. I don't know if you know that. We converted it. It was our Arena Baseball League channel from before when I was with the Knights. So the Knights of Degen. So it's good. It's an old channel, but I think it was the perfect place for Apex. It was a really similar audience, and so that fits out. We're going to be launching a couple other channels that we can maybe let's just talk about them now because we're here.
Yeah.
So we're about to launch. I posted it in the Discord today. I will tell you, that's another thing I didn't see coming, Jake. Is it just me or is Discord dead?
I don't know. So I've really only used it for like fan controlled football prior, and that Discord kind of died. So then I think that along with ours has been a little bit more quiet.
Yeah, well, and I'm in a bunch of other ones, and like there's not the chatter there used to be in Discord. Knight, tell me if you see the same thing in the Discord servers you're in. I know you're in a bunch too. But like that mode of communication kind of has died down a little bit. But anyway, we're one of the big dreams we have one day is to launch our own pro wrestling promotion, which would be a lot of fun, an indie promotion. That's probably 5 to 10 years away at minimum. But I got a friend of mine and a bunch of our other friends. We're doing a new monthly show on the Twitch for Apex. So we're trying to separate out Apex specific stuff, Instigator specific stuff, and try to like have Apex have everything, and then like our other stuff have their own channels and things as needed. So that way, if you're only interested in that, you don't have to watch everything. But anyway, so we're going to be doing a monthly RPG of Dark Web Wrestling. The first one will debut late in April. We'll have a date soon, where I'll be the creative for it, just like I would Dark Web Wrestling, and like these guys will be role playing. What I like about this is it's not like Dungeons and Dragons where you're like role playing a wizard. You're actually role playing the person whose profession is a wrestler instead of being a wrestler. And so like it'll have backstage drama, it'll have all the stuff. I'm really excited about it. We talked about earlier, we're doing yeah. Night seeing it. Okay, good. It's not just me. But anyway, so we're going to be bringing back Amateur Night this summer as well. The first game for the Penguins will be the 13th. We'll probably start streaming them. I'll be back on the 17th, so probably right after that we'll start streaming the games on a slight delay. But I'm excited about that. But we will have a Twitch channel for Dark Web Wrestling, and it's already got affiliate status, which is great. And so that, you know, all that's to say, that's our hope for our YouTube, right, is to get the Instigators YouTube to affiliate status. It's another source of income for the team, which is super important for us. You know, we're going to continue to aggressively search for partnerships. Some of them will be more like it's all the rage now, right? These ambassador programs. We got one with Dubby this year. We also have one that we're about to launch with Publer. And so we'll see how those are going. But, you know, I think that stuff's really interesting as well as we diversify some of that. And just trying to get folks like one, try to get stuff going on the Apex channel year round, but also just kind of measure what people are interested in. So if you love pro wrestling, if you like role playing games, like watch Dark Web Wrestling starting in April. It'll be once a month. We'll do some votes on the Patreon for it as well, right? And so we're going to try to make it a lot of fun. And then, we'll use those things, I think, Jake, right, to kind of assess where the interest is and what to put resources into and what not to. So we'll experiment with a bunch of stuff, and hopefully a lot of it lasts. This is one that's been kind of a brainchild for me for a while. In fact, there may come a time when we start asking fans if they want to like guest star as wrestlers for a session or something. We could do all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's going to be a fun thing coming up here. And obviously that is one of our goals is to have content throughout the whole off season, not just while we have Instigators games, but to make the Apex a year-round operation. So there's a multitude of things to keep everybody interested in. One of the other things I think this season, we implemented our commercials a little bit differently. So we actually shot and filmed some, I guess, legitimate or semi-legitimate commercials.
I call them legitimate. Yeah.
But I think that's one of those things as well. Like we're trying to grow and take that next step into the content creation. I think just neither one of us really have as far as I know, a background in this type of stuff.
Yeah,
so it's always learning on the fly. And every time I think we're able to implement these new things and improve our skills, it's something I always am proud of and appreciate the feedback we get from the fans on that.
Yeah, absolutely. To answer, Knight wants to say, hey, speaking of other things you're working in, yeah, you got it. When do the Ballers games start back up? They open their season April 20th against the Ogden Raptors. That's one of the things, I don't think, I don't know yet, but it's going to be hard for you and I to launch another podcast, especially with roller games coming out that we're going to be doing soon that we haven't even talked about yet. We probably will next week or something, but it would be great to find someone who loves baseball to do an Apex Athletic Collective Oakland Ballers podcast. We've already come up with the name Ballin' Out. And so, if you guys know somebody who's interested in running their own podcast, at least as the face side, like Jake and I think would be happy to run the production side on the back end. I think that would be awesome because we definitely want to get that started. But their season opens April 20th. And I think they play like 6 games against the Raptors to start back to back or whatever. So really excited for that. But yeah, co-owners of the Ballers too, although very minor. So, but love the Ballers nonetheless and looking forward to their success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if we'll do it again this off-season year or whatever, but we were on a NASCAR a couple of times too, so
Yeah,
I'll see if we can somehow manage to do that again. I know one of these seasons we've got to get a celebrity player. I think that's another thing going into next season. We've had a few in talks with, but just haven't been able to pull out all the strings together. But I think that's another big thing next season we're aiming to do.
yeah, I'm really excited about it. We launched our community partnership program. We've started to have some really good conversations with local high schools where like their head coach could be our celebrity player. So same with like some church pastors, like local celebrity stuff. The league actually, speaking of rule changes, changed the rules so you can't have any professional basketball players as celebrity players because at some point we'd had conversations with a couple of former NBA players to play a game for us, but now that's not allowed. So we're going to shift to local celebrities, which I think will be good for us online, and we'll still have the same, or I'm sorry, in Fishers, but will give us kind of that same excitement online to see this person come in and ball out. At some point, Jake, I will be the celebrity player for the Instigators. My jersey did make its debut multiple times during the season. Well, it debuted once, but it appeared multiple times. And so we're one step away now from me lacing it up with the Instigators and scoring, my career high of whatever I score, which might be a 0.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to throw my name in the ring for that too. I don't think we have a Jakeymuffins jersey yet, but I'm sure we'll have one ready for next season.
For sure.
But we're coming up towards that hour mark, or a little bit past that actually. Was there any final thoughts you wanted to hit as far as season 2 for the Instigators?
There you go. You can go Frosty McSpacely.
Oh
Old
yeah.
You know, up and down season. You know, I think, you know, just talking about the financial side of it. You know, we spent more money, didn't quite make as much money, so we still didn't like break even. Um, you know, and so year 3 is the year that we got to do that, and so we're going to be looking at like the financial side of things to make sure we can make that happen. But you know, outside of that, like up and down season, 7-9 to 7-10. You know, a lot of change and a lot stayed the same, but you know, ultimately, I'm like super happy to be doing this with you, Jake, to be doing this with the other owners, to be doing this with the fans that have followed us from the fan controlled days. You know, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we can build Apex in years to come. I just filed our taxes, which is a lot of fun, something that we don't talk about, but like the behind the scenes stuff. And so I'm excited to see where this goes. I think that we're in the right place. Fishers is the right place. I think that we have a good core of players that will be returning next year, I hope. I think we have a good core of fans that really care about this team. And now it's about how do we blow this up, right? So as much as you can, my ask is for you to share Apex stuff with your friends and family. Anyone you know that's a basketball fan, anyone that you know that's interested in co-ownership, anyone that you know that wants to help make decisions and has a lot of opinions. We want them to be part of this community because we want this community to continue to grow. So thank you everyone for, you know, season 2 and the memories that it made. There's some things that I'll never forget. And let's go kick some ass in season 3.
Yeah, I don't think I could have said it better myself. But you know, we really appreciate all the support from everyone. Obviously, hitting on that finances, one of the big things different wise from, you know, season 1, we had a primary like a big sponsorship in season 1 that didn't carry over into season 2. You know, obviously some things going on with that or with the business that did that, but I mean, ultimately, that I think that's part of the reasoning behind that finances. But I think Fishers is definitely, I think that's the spot for us. Seems like we've got a good community outreach there. We've gotten our commercials already for some of these you know, local businesses, and some of these businesses, you know, like Dave Rogers, you know, he's helped out with the team throughout the season. So I love seeing that community being involved as well. So I'm really looking forward to season 3. And you know, the off season for the Apex with all the content and new stuff we're going to be rolling out here, and continuing to have that fan input. You know, we'll have a bunch of fan votes out this off season. And you know, one thing I think myself as well as everyone else involved, we're gonna hopefully, you know, get that social media game back up a little bit, so it's not just as repetitive, same type of post. As we're rolling out these new content, we'll try to keep you guys updated on the social media end for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look for Apex Athletic Collective social media to blow up specifically. So there's going to be some fun stuff. But next up, Dark Web Wrestling.
Yeah, and I think that is going to do it for tonight's episode. So episode 83, we're almost up to that 100 mark. Thank you as always for everyone for joining us, and thank you for being a part of season 2. Until next time, as always, be great and instigate.